After reading chapter 4 carefully, answer the following questions. How was the robbery unsuccessful? Bill Sikes and Toby's plan was discovered as the servants of the house attacked the robbers. Mr. Giles, a servant, shot Oliver's arm. Bill stayed in the country, and Toby ran away to London to make it harder for anyone to find him and to tell Fagin of what had happened. How did Fagin feel when he heard the news, and who did he meet? He wasn't happy as Oliver was shot. Then he met Monks, an evil tall man with dark hair and dark eyes. What did Monks suggest Fagin should do with Oliver? He suggested keeping him as a pickpocket in the gang. Where did Oliver go after he came back to himself? Because Oliver was shot and in need for help, he went to the nearest house, the one they tried to rob the night before. It was Mrs. Mayle's. Who was Rose? She was a pretty girl of 17 who lived with her aunt, Mrs. Mayle. Who was Dr. Losberne? He was Mrs. Mayle's doctor. He was kind to Oliver. After he treated Oliver, he asked Rose and Mrs. Mayle to see Oliver. How did Rose and her aunt feel when they saw Oliver? They were very surprised to see a small sleeping boy, not a big strong man as they thought. Rose couldn't believe Oliver could be a criminal because his face was innocent. But Dr. Losberne told her that evil could live in anybody. After listening to Oliver, how did Dr. Losberne try to help Oliver? He tried to prevent Mr. Giles from calling the police by telling him that he might get into trouble because he had shot Oliver. But suddenly he found that Mr. Brittles, the other servant, had already called the police. Why would the magistrate send Oliver to prison? Oliver would be sent to prison for joining a gang of thieves and trying to break into a house. How did Oliver try to express his thanks for the two ladies? After Oliver had completely recovered, he asked if he could work for them. Why did Oliver want to visit Mr. Brownlow? He wanted to tell him about what had happened to his books and money to clear himself. And also he wanted to tell him that he was safe. But after leaving him for 3 months, he found out that Mr. Brownlow had put his house for sale and traveled to the West Indies. Who was Nurse Sally and what did she want? She was the nurse that helped Oliver's mother during giving birth, and she wanted to meet Mrs. Corney. She wanted to meet Mrs. Corney, the matron of the workhouse, to tell her that she had stolen a gold locket from Oliver's mother. That locket was the only proof of Oliver's bloodline. Important quotations. He looks so helpless and small. If it hadn't been for your generosity, I might be helpless like this small child. Who said these words and to whom? Rose said these words to Mrs. Mayle and Dr. Losberne. Who is the person the speaker is talking about? Oliver. What did the speaker mean by if it hadn't been? She meant without Mrs. Mayley's hospitality, she might have faced Oliver's fate. We think the criminals were from the city, probably 2 men and a boy. Who said these words and to whom? Detective Blathers said these words to Dr. Losburn, Giles, and Brittles. How did the two detectives prove their intelligence? They could identify that the criminals were 2 men and a small boy. Who were the men mentioned? They were Bill Sikes and Toby Crockett. She was rich enough for a good hospital. I stole from her before she died. Who said these words and to whom? Nurse Sally said these words to Mrs. Corney. What did the speaker steal from whom? She stole a gold locket from Oliver's mother. What happened to the speaker after saying this? She died. Find the mistake and correct it. After the robbery, Mr. Sikes went to London. After the robbery, Toby Crockett went to London. Monks met Fagin at Sikes' house. Monks met Fagin outside Fagin's house. Oliver found Mr. Brownlow had moved to London. Oliver found that Mr. Brownlow had moved to the West Indies. Nurse Sally stole money from Oliver's mother. Nurse Sally stole a gold locket from Oliver's mother. Blathers and Duff were 2 servants. Blathers and Duff were 2 detectives. Thanks for listening with Nafham. Learn easily and simply.